Caroline Garza. I go to Texas Tech and I'm studying viticultureology, which is the study of grape growing and winemaking. Today I wanted to start off by asking y'all a question. How many of y'all would say that you would pick wine as your first choice of an alcoholic drink over beer or liquor? Okay, good. I wanted to use that to relate to the growth of the American wine industry over the last 40 years. Even though this is a small sample size, it represents the American public pretty well. According to the Gallup poll as of July 2012, a reported 35% of Americans chose wine to be their preference alcoholic drink. This is a huge difference in numbers of wine drinkers compared to the 1970s. Today I wanted to explain the growth of the American wine industry by talking about how the industry started out in the 70s, the wine tasting event that revolutionized American wines, and how the changes affected American wine drinkers today. While researching the history of American wines, I found an interesting story written by American news reporter and wine connoisseur George Tabor about a blind wine tasting that took place in France in 1976. Tabor explains the situation of the American wine industry at the time and how it all changed. According to NapaVintners.com, the United States wine country called Napa Valley was hit hard by Prohibition. Napa Valley winemakers began rebuilding their wineries in 1944, but didn't have quite enough support yet. Fortunately, the California wineries had not completely destroyed their crops, so it was fairly easy for them to get back into business. By the 70s, many of the Napa Valley winemakers decided that it was their goal to make the best wines that they could. Most Americans still preferred either beer or liquor over wine, and the winemakers wanted to make a product that was able to compete. Beau Barrett, owner of a Napa Valley vineyard called Chateau Montelena, was convinced that he could produce a wine in Napa Valley that would rival the French wines. He was also convinced that if any winemaker from Napa Valley was successful, they would all be successful, and he wanted to make a name for himself and the rest of California. Although he was hardworking and determined, he was also humble. When his bottle of Chardonnay was sent off to France in 1976 to compete in a blind taste test, he was surprised to find out that his bottle beat the French wines and won first place. Despite his surprise, all he was quoted saying was, "That's nice." Afterwards, the news spread quickly that the Californians had beat the French. Chateau Montelena's Chardonnay became an overnight success, and people all across the U.S. began asking to buy a bottle at liquor stores and restaurants. Ultimately, wine started to become more popular with Americans, and they started to drink it more regularly. Today, there are more than 450 wineries in Napa Valley alone. According to Texas Wine and Grape Growers Association, there are 273 wineries in Texas now, while there were less than 10 in the 70s. The consumption and popularity of wine has increased dramatically from the 1970s until now, creating a healthy industry. Along with the increase in vineyards, people have also started to show interest in learning about wine. Wine bars have become very popular, where people can go and serve themselves tastings of all different kinds of wines. Because of the popularity, affordability, and readily available good quality wines, it has gone from primarily the country club table to the average American dinner table. So from the 70s until now, huge changes have occurred that have boosted the American wine industry to become what it is now. In the early 70s, it was nearly inexistent. In 1976, Chateau Montelena's Chardonnay won the blind wine tasting in France and began the sudden growth of the American wine industry into what it is now. I hope y'all have gotten an idea of how the industry has grown over the past 40 years. Hopefully we'll continue to see even more growth in the American wine industry to come.